The forest was quiet, too quiet. Clint Eastwood had been in many places in his life, war zones, movie sets, and courtroom battles with studios. But out here, under a canopy of whispering pines and drifting fog, there was no script. No second take. Just the kind of silence a man either feared or understood. He carried his rifle low, moving slowly through the early morning haze. A solitary hunt. That's what he had wanted, away from cameras, away from headlines, just man, instinct, and earth. But suddenly, it shattered, a scream, sharp, raw, human. Clint stopped in his tracks. His breath caught mid-step, another scream. Fol, high-pitched and desperate, a woman, not far. Not faking, it wasn't the kind of scream people use for attention. It was the kind torn from the throat when something wild is closing in fast. He pivoted on instinct. Help! Somebody! Help me! Clint's eyes narrowed. That voice wasn't just panic, it was pure terror, without a second thought. He slung the rifle into position and pushed through the underbrush, fast and silent. Branches slapped at his jacket. His boots thudded against soft ground. Every step pulled him deeper into the wild and closer to something ugly, whatever this was. It wasn't a hunter's story anymore. It was a rescue, and someone's life was hanging by a scream. The trees broke suddenly into a wide, uneven clearing, the forest breathing open like a secret it didn't want to share. And in the center of it, Clint saw her, a young woman, maybe in her early 30s, stood backed against a moss-covered boulder, hands trembling, eyes wide with primal fear. Her voice was gone now, but her lips still moved, whispering prayers or maybe just trying to hold on to her sanity. Surrounding her were 3 wild coyotes, lean, snarling, and far too confident. Forest scavengers weren't usually this bold. Unless starvation or blood had already tipped their instincts into madness. One of them crept closer, teeth bared. Another circled, licking its lips. The woman stumbled backward, her heel catching on a root, almost falling. Her scream cracked through the trees once more. That's when Clint stepped out of the shadows. Hey! His voice thundered louder than a rifle. The animals jerked around, surprised, but not scared enough. The lead coyote snarled and began pacing toward him. Clint didn't flinch. He raised his hunting rifle, eyes locked on the closest threat. His fingers squeezed. Boom! A shot echoed through the forest like the crack of God's own whip. The lead animal yelped and crumpled. The others paused for only a heartbeat, then bolted into the trees, vanishing like smoke. Silence returned. Clint exhaled and lowered the barrel. The woman collapsed to her knees, crying, shaking, alive. He walked toward her, slow and steady, his silhouette framed by golden shafts of morning light cutting through the mist. You're safe now, he said gently. It's over. She looked up at him like she was seeing a ghost. Wait. I know you, she whispered through tears. Yeah, Clint nodded, offering a hand. But out here, I'm just the guy who heard you scream. And in that clearing, with the scent of gunpowder fading and life given one more chance, a quiet connection was born between 2 strangers who were never supposed to meet. The woman sat on a fallen log, hugging herself, trying to slow the tremble in her limbs. Clint crouched nearby, checking her ankle where she had stumbled. No breaks. Just a nasty twist and a scare that would echo in her bones for weeks. You're lucky, he said, wrapping her ankle with a spare cloth from his pack. Coyotes don't usually travel that close to people unless something's off. Or unless they think someone's alone, she nodded faintly. Her voice still came out shaky. I was hiking, took a wrong turn. My phone died an hour ago. And then they came out of nowhere. Clint didn't respond right away. He just handed her a canteen and let the silence hold its space. Some moments didn't need filling. They needed respect. After a long sip, she wiped her mouth and studied his face. You're really Clint Eastwood, aren't you? He gave a tired half-smile, the kind that knew fame was a heavy coat that never quite came off. Was last time I checked. Her face lit up, not with fangirl hysteria, but with something deeper, recognition, gratitude. My dad loved your films. We used to watch them every Saturday. Gran Torino was his favorite. He always said, that man doesn't need to shout. His silence does the shouting. Clint chuckled low. Smart man, your dad. She softened, tears threatening again, but for a different reason this time. It wasn't just the relief of survival. It was the surreal comfort of sitting in the forest, wounded but alive, beside the man who had shaped so many quiet nights in her childhood. I'm Emily, by the way. Nice to meet you, Emily. A breeze rustled the leaves above them. The danger had passed, but something else had taken root, a strange warmth blooming in the stillness. Not romance. Not yet, but trust. And in a world full of noise that was a rare beginning, the sun had climbed higher by the time they started their slow trek back through the woods. Clint offered his arm without a word, and Emily leaned into it. Her limp steady, her breathing easier, the rifle now hung across Clint's back. The danger had passed, but he stayed alert, scanning the trees, reading shadows like a man who had never forgotten what it means to be hunted. You always hunt alone? Emily asked as they passed a narrow trail. Usually, Clint replied, less noise, less complication, must be peaceful. Most days. She looked over at him, eyes still red from the tears, but now focused and curious. So? Why'd you come today? Clint hesitated, not because he didn't know, but because saying it out loud felt heavier than he expected. I lost someone recently. Someone I didn't make enough time for, coming out here. I guess I was looking for quiet. But maybe I was just trying to get lost long enough to feel something. Emily nodded slowly. I came for the same reason. He glanced over. You did? It was my dad's favorite trail, she said softly. He passed away 6 months ago. Cancer. I haven't come back since the funeral. I thought maybe if I walked where we used to hike, I'd feel him again. Clint stopped walking. Emily looked up at him, confused. That's not just the same reason, Clint said, his voice low. That's the exact same reason. And suddenly the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was shared, grief, guilt, the ache of too many words, left unsaid. They walked the rest of the path without filling the air with unnecessary talk. Just the sound of boots against dirt and birds in the trees. Two people, different generations, carrying the same kind of heartbreak through the woods, and somehow making each other feel just a little less alone. When they reached the trailhead and Clint helped her into her car, Emily paused before closing the door. Would you come by later? I live about 20 minutes from here. Just dinner, as a thank you. Clint raised an eyebrow. You sure that's not a fan invite? No, she said with a small smile. It's a human invite, for saving my life. And for not asking me to explain why I broke down. Clint tipped his head in that signature Eastwood nod. All right. I'll bring dessert. She laughed. The first real laugh all day. And as her car rolled down the dirt road, Clint looked up at the trees once more and whispered to no one in particular. Guess I wasn't out here just for the deer after all. The house was modest tucked behind rows of old maples, their branches dancing in the amber light of sunset. Clint pulled up slowly, his truck crunching along the gravel driveway. He carried a small brown bag, homemade peach cobbler, and the same calm presence that had filled cinema screens for decades. Emily opened the door before he even knocked. Right on time, she smiled. Didn't want to risk being late. For a home-cooked meal, Clint said, lifting the bag. Inside, the house felt warm. Not in the temperature sense, but the kind of warmth that lingers in places where love once lived. Family pictures on the mantel, a worn leather chair with a folded blanket. Faint traces of cigar smoke, probably from her father, still clung to the walls like echoes. Dinner was simple, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. But it wasn't about the food. It was about what the silence allowed. They ate without rush, pausing for stories. Emily shared how her dad used to whistle while hiking, how he always brought extra granola bars, just in case, and how he once claimed to have seen a bear but ran so fast she never found out if it was real. Clint laughed. Not the polite kind, the real kind? The kind that shook some dust off the man inside the legend. He sounds like someone I would have liked. You would have, she said softly. You remind me of him? Same calm, same stare that makes people tell the truth. There was a pause. He would have loved to meet you. Clint looked at his plate for a long moment. You know, he said slowly, when I came out to that forest, I thought I was chasing something, maybe running from something, but I didn't expect to find someone who reminded me that being seen, really seen, still matters. Emily didn't speak. She just reached out, rested her hand on his quiet, wordless thank you doubt the table didn't need flowers or candles or wine. What it had was something rarer. Two people, both carrying grief like stones in their pockets, finally setting one of them down. The stars were out by the time Clint stepped back onto Emily's porch. The forest air had cooled. The wind was gentler now, brushing against his jacket like a whispered farewell. From inside, soft music played, something old and slow, maybe a track her dad once loved. Emily stood in the doorway, arms folded, smiling gently. Thank you. Again, she said, for everything. Clint paused on the last step, glancing up at the sky. Funny thing about life, he said. You go looking for solitude, and you find someone who reminds you why you ever cared in the first place. She nodded. You ever come back this way? She added. There's always a plate waiting, or just a chair and silence. Whatever you need. Clint gave a soft laugh, then tipped his head in that Eastwood way, respectful, honest, and full of meaning without needing a speech. Be careful out there, Emily. I will, you too. He climbed into his truck. The engine grumbled to life, headlights sweeping across the gravel. As he pulled away, she watched him disappear down the wooded road, brake lights blinking like the final flash of a story well told. Inside the cab, Clint drove slow, not because of the dark, but because he wasn't in a rush to outrun what he felt. This wasn't a day he'd forget. He hadn't just saved someone from coyotes. He had faced his own ghosts in the trees. He had sat at a stranger's table and found pieces of himself in their stories. And for once, the silence wasn't something he needed to escape. It was something he could carry with peace. As the road stretched ahead and the stars widened above, Clint Eastwood, the hunter, the hero, the loner, smiled to himself because today he hadn't played a role. He had simply been human.